The i20N, especially compared to some of its competition, is holding its value really, really well.
Now, if you've done the slightest bit of research on the internet about these, you've probably seen all the horror stories about fuel pump failure and a bunch of other things. Let me just set all of that straight.
Honestly, if you love driving, there are very few other cars that can top one of these. Okay, did you know that Top Gear not only awarded this, the Hyundai i20N, their Performance Car of the Year award? This little nugget of a thing took out the entire competition. The overall Top Gear Car of the Year award, this thing won it. Not this exact one, but yeah, you know what I mean. Now, think about that for a second. An affordable little South Korean 5-door hot hatch took on the likes of the Lamborghini Huracan STO, the Ferrari SF90, and the Porsche 992 GT3 and beat them. However, that was back in 2021 when these were brand new. So what about now? How are they aging? Look, I'll tell you what, before we decide if we think you should buy one of these or not, how about we take you through what can possibly go wrong with them, starting with the exterior. First of all, and look, this is a complaint we're seeing time and time again on more recently built cars, but the paint, it can be really thin and soft. Loads of owners have reported issues with stone chips and just scratching really easily, especially on the black roof. Now, to hopefully mitigate this, plenty of owners recommend just getting the entire car PPF, that's a paint protection film. However, some owners that have used a thinner film have complained that even the film dents really easily because the paint underneath is just too soft to hold it all stable. Also, just check the paint quality along the bottoms of the doors as well, because there have been reports of a few discrepancies there as well. Now, the i20N has recently been updated and hopefully this next issue has been resolved, but on the pre-update cars, this entire rear light cluster can fill with water after you wash it, or just fill with condensation in general. But aside from that, that's about it for exterior issues with the i20N. It's interesting because when you look at things like electronic issues, panel gap problems, or just shitty build quality, problems that we see on many other hot hatches, often costing tens of thousands of dollars more than these don't suffer from any of those things. That's about it for problems. But just back to that recent update for a second. What update? Like, short of a few aesthetic changes and a little bit more tech here and there, pretty much the recipe stays exactly the same. The 1.6 litre Turbo 4 is carried over, as is the lack of an automatic gearbox. The tech was updated slightly with over-the-air updates now being available, but honestly, that's about it. And this makes you wonder why you'd bother buying a new one, because why not just save a few $1,000s and buy a really good used example instead? See, brand new, these things are retailing for around about $36,000, but on the used market, they kick off from around about $27,000. Granted, that will be an early 2021 model with loads of Ks on it, but still, it's a decent saving. But let's say your budget is $30,000. Well, at a stretch, this might get you into an okay condition 2022 example, but you've got to remember, thanks to Hyundai's excellent 5-year warranty, it's still going to have a couple of years of factory support left on it. Although, the other way to look at this is why not just spend the extra $6,000 and get a brand spanking new one with a full factory warranty on it. But look, no matter if you're buying new or used, all of this goes to show you that the i20N, especially compared to some of its competition, is holding its value really, really well. For example, take a 2022 Volkswagen Polo GTI. When brand new, these retailed for around about $39,000. These days, that GTI's average sale price is around about 30 grand, whereas a 2022 i20N, well, they're swapping hands for more like $35,000. Think about that. The Polo GTI used to ask $4,000 more than these when brand new, but these days, on average, they're selling for about $5,000 less. So maybe the smarter financial decision is to avoid the German, although the Polo GTI is actually made in South Africa. Actually, just on that point, these aren't made in South Korea, these are made in Turkey. Anyway, let's talk about the looks for a second, and I understand, obviously looks are supposed to be subjective, but I mean, come on. This is such a tough looking nugget of a little car. This is very, very nearly exactly what a little hot hatch should look like. Now, I say very nearly because, quick warning, I'm about to say something very controversial here. I'm not a fan of the little red highlights everywhere. I totally understand that's a whole Hyundai N thing, but look at the dragon red examples of these and they don't have the red highlights. And for me, they just look a bit more bit more subtle, a bit more sophisticated. And I think that's what makes a great hot hatch cool. It's when they just hint at their performance chops. Without the red accents, it looks like it's just suggesting that it might be something special. And that's cool. But with all these like red accents going on, I just feel like it's the car shouting, hey everyone, look at me, I'm fast, I promise. Also, on the right aftermarket rims, these things can look amazing. Also, sometimes aftermarket rims can equate to being lighter rims, and that's going to reduce the car's unsprung mass, and that's always a good thing. Also, lowered just a little bit and fitted with some quality aftermarket suspension parts like those from Whiteline. Honestly, Whiteline have a huge range to choose from. Not only will it look even better, it will somehow handle even better, and that's saying something because these things are amazing to drive. Now, the hot tip here when it comes to buying aftermarket parts and accessories and checking out the full Whiteline range for these, or really any car, is to check out our mates at Automotive Superstore. All you've got to do is type in your rego and the Automotive Superstore site will display exactly what's going to be best suited for your car. And while you're there, why not check out the other 400,000 plus parts and accessories that are also available? We love them, so will you. Check them out, the link's below. Now look, the other people you need to check out are the Hyundai N owners groups and forums, because honestly, this community is amazing. They were instrumental in helping us put this video together, and I've been to a few of the events, and honestly, they're right up there with the likes of Lotus and Porsche in terms of advice and camaraderie and just respect amongst owners. Bloody legends. Also, it's not just the owners groups and forums. Hyundai's warranty actually covers you for non-competitive track days. So if you really want to see what your car can do, even Hyundai have your back. Now inside, what are these wonderful Hyundai owners bloody complaining about? Well, let's talk about the seats. As utterly supportive and comfortable as they are, and unlike the Ford Fiesta ST where you're constantly wishing they could be adjusted lower, these things, they honestly offer a near perfect seating position. Quite a few owners have complained that some of the materials Hyundai have used aren't all that resilient. For example, on the side bolsters especially, already owners are complaining about some of the leather cracking, or the squidge gets too squidgy, or the threading kind of comes loose. Now, when you go through some of the owners groups and forums, you might find the occasional owner claiming that Hyundai have actually replaced the seats under warranty. That's interesting. Maybe look into that. Also, another area that Hyundai seem to have cut some costs is in the materials used in the rest of the interior. Now, look, it is important to remember these things are based on a budget-friendly hatchback, so it's safe to assume there's going to be plenty of hard, scratchy plastics, which, yeah, pretty much everything in here is hard plastics. The problem is hard plastic interiors in Australia with our harsh climate and our coarse roads can result in quite a few rattles and squeaks and weird sounds. Even in this car, there do seem to be some little rattles emanating from the passenger footwell area. But compliments to Hyundai here, because they've gone and done a Mazda with these hard plastics. What I mean is that, yeah, everything's hard to touch, but visually it looks more expensive than it actually is, and that's a good thing. Also, another good thing about hard plastics is just how resilient these interiors can be. I've actually lived with a handful of different i20Ns over the years as press cars and loan vehicles, and I've given them all a pretty hard time, but the interiors, even after abuse, honestly, they hold up really well. Even in regards to using it in terms of practicality, you've got a pretty good sized glove box there. You've got a wireless charging pad down here for your phone. You've got two cup holders here, and they're small enough to hold small pretentious coffees like the ones I love, like an oat piccolo. You've got a cubby hole under here, which is honestly a bit small, but the armrest slides back and forth to make things even more comfortable. Excellent sized door bins, but they are scratchy plastics, and that can mean bottles rattle around a little bit. There's nothing under there. There's no sunglasses holder. That's a bit annoying. There's no special spaces under the seats. That's it for practicality up front. Oh, no. You've also got these little sections here. These are specifically designed to collect as much dust and bits and pieces of life's filth as possible. Now, the infotainment system. If you've watched any of our other videos, you might have noticed a trend forming that anytime we feature a more recent car, there are endless complaints about infotainment systems with Bluetooth dropping out, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto not loading properly. But in the i20N, it's actually pretty bloody good. Look, they're not without their complaints, but the complaints seem to be so few and far between, we wouldn't call them common issues at all. Also, it's a really nice system to use. It's not BMW iDrive levels of intuitive, but still really, really good. Also, I love that all the air conditioning controls have actual buttons and it's separate from the screen. That's smart. But speaking of the screen, honestly, the levels of adjustment are just mind-blowing. If you're someone that likes to tinker with your car and tech in general, you're gonna love this. Now, just on features and equipment, look, this is the flagship i20 model, so it's gonna come with about as much stuff as an i20 can possibly get. And look, this is something that Hyundai have always been renowned for, offering a huge range of kit for a really good price, and the i20N just continues that tradition. However, one area that Hyundai might try to sting you is when it comes to the price of some of the consumables. Now look, plenty of manufacturers are guilty for this, so rather than paying ridiculous amounts of money for things like wiper blades or going to a spare parts place and trying to decipher which of the thousands of different options are going to work for you best, and do they even fit your car, and how hard are they to fit, just to mitigate all of those issues, hit the WiperTech link down below. Now look, we've been working with WiperTech for a couple of years now, and it's because we genuinely love their product. We use them on all of our cars, and they're the only ones we'd highly recommend. Not only because they're some of the best wiping wiper blades out there, but they're so easy to order, and they're gonna fit perfectly. Plus, when you order a set via the link below, you're gonna get 15% off and free express shipping. That means they're gonna rock up at your door toot sweet. That is, unless you do what the wonderful Emma has done and lend us your car to feature. And if we do that, we're going to give you a set for free as a thank you present. To volunteer your car, simply hit the link below or message us on the socials. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 17 centimeters taller than 2024 World Rally Champion Hyundai's Thierry Neuville. This is in my driving position, and it's okay for a car this size. My knees aren't hitting the back of the seat, that's a good thing. Footroom is a little bit on the limited side, but the windows are an okay size, so it doesn't feel too claustrophobic in here. Seats, comfortable enough, a little too bouncy maybe, and really no lateral support, but it's okay. And then as far as features and practicality in the back seat, not a whole lot. You've got a power outlet here, you've got a spot which might fit a phone sort of there, but it's going to bounce about all over the place. Uno pocket on the back of the seat there, no pull down armrest. Does have cup holders in the doors, but they're near impossible to get to once the door's closed if you have legs. And also more spots to collect life's filth just there. That's about it. However, a few owners have had some complaints back here, especially in the earlier models. The rear seats can rattle and carry on. The problem here is that the little latch that holds onto the hook for the seat when it's in the upright position, sometimes it's not tight enough and that kind of rattles around. There are some super easy fixes for this. Jump on the owners groups and forums, it'll explain everything. And then in the boot, actually quite good. There's a little bit of a load lip here, but the opening aperture is quite large. Also, there's more storage under this boot floor, and unlike some other cars in this class, like my Fiesta ST, the seats actually fold flat. There's no load lip there, and that's a bloody good thing. So you'd think that winning Top Gear's Performance Car of the Year award would equate to this car being basically perfect to drive, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. Firstly, the turning circle. Look, it's fantastic that this car has a limited front diff, and it's going to rip you out of corners like nobody's business. But to protect that front diff, Hyundai have had to reduce how much steering lock the thing can get. So it basically has the same turning circle as a World War II aircraft carrier, and that can be really frustrating in a little car like this. Also, that diff combined with the factory Pirelli P0 tyres, when you're at full lock, say when you're parking it, you can get a bit of a shudder from the front end. Although owners recommend fitting some Michelin Pilot Sports because that should fix this issue. It might also fix another issue too. Look, the standard Pirellis, they do grip and perform really well, but according to the owners, they don't last all that well, especially if you're participating in any warranty covered track days. But look, aside from those little issues when you're at full lock, as so many videos have already explained, this thing is an utterly wonderful car to drive, and more importantly, it's wonderful pretty much no matter what the scenario. Look, I've been lucky enough to track quite a few of these things, and I'm always blown away at not just their sheer ability on a racetrack, but just how fun they are at the limit. But then after that track day, change a few settings and drive home on the freeway or deal with traffic, and it's still a blast. On the freeway, they are plenty refined enough to just soak up thousands of kilometers with ease. Okay, the road noise and the pretty firm ride can get a little taxing, but it's not a nightmare. But then in traffic, this torquey little engine and the phenomenal steering, it makes things like changing lanes to merge really fun, let alone dispatching with any roundabouts. Even when it comes just to reverse parking it, because the vision out is really good and it's got parking sensors and a really good camera and this phenomenal steering, honestly, it makes even a boring reverse park kind of entertaining. Look, you got to remember, the i20N It beat some of the best from Ferrari and Lamborghini and Porsche to win that Top Gear award. And yeah, even used, I totally agree. This is a phenomenal driving package. Honestly, if you love driving, no matter what the budget, there are very few other cars that can top one of these. That is, unless it stops working, because there are a few reports out there of mechanical issues like faulty fuel pumps. What's the story there? Well, unfortunately, I can't answer that question because I'm not a qualified mechanic, but Jim is.
As I alluded to at the start, yes, they do have fuel pump complications. You get the dreaded P0088 fault code, which is telling you your fuel pump is on the way out or it's already failed. Another indicator is, it's very subtle, you might notice that you're broken down on the side of the road. Typically only before Feb 23, that's when all the problems occurred. It's not a design issue, it's basically a manufacturing fault with the actual fuel pump. And all of them done under warranty. In fact, there's a recall now that pretty much covers it. Another common problem a lot of owners complain about is a horrible rattle coming from the rear bimodal exhaust valve. Basically what happens there's a spring that fails and the whole thing just rattles, and sometimes it doesn't open or close. Pretty common. Now, if it's out of warranty, Hyundai will sell you the whole valve, and it ain't cheap, but you can actually buy an aftermarket spring to repair the one you have, which is significantly cheaper. And that can actually be a fun little DIY project if you're that way inclined. Look, the wheel bearings on these, there's a bit of anecdotal stuff going around on these. Personally, I don't think they fail any more frequently than any other car in this segment. Although if you are doing track days and you've got big sticky tyres on it, well then you might wear them out prematurely. But they're actually not expensive nor difficult to fix. The transmissions in these, there are a few complaints about the synchros not being up to scratch, basically crunching between gears. Look, if you just drive with a bit of mechanical sympathy, you can drive around it and it's not really an issue. Also, some people complain that the clutch wears prematurely. I would also say that's probably something to do with the driver technique. But having said that, if you have one of these and it has modifications, well, yes, you are likely to break transmissions and wear out clutches. So any modifications are likely to take its toll on the car. And speaking of modifications, if you're looking at one, just make sure, I say this all the time, make sure the modifications have been done well with good equipment. I can't emphasize that enough. Shitty mods can destroy a car. Thankfully also, the manufacturers here recommend a very sensible service interval of 10,000 Ks, but if you're tracking it, maybe do that more frequently. And also, although they say you have limited warranty if you are doing track days on these, just be careful. If it's had modifications, that actually can void your warranty. So just keep an eye on what's been done, because you don't want to void that warranty.
But here's the thing, before we decide if we think you should buy one of these or not, there's something else possibly negative that we need to discuss. In Australia, the i20N is one of the very few true performance cars that are approved for P-plate use. Plus, it's relatively affordable and it has a constantly growing aftermarket and tuning scene. And see, this means that quite a few of these on the used market have just been ruined with shitty mods, or maybe they've been driven by youths that have as much mechanical sympathy as they do driving talent. And that's very little. Do not, I repeat, do not buy an i20N that has suffered in the hands of these dickheads. Look, yes, it's an incredibly resilient platform, but there are plenty available on the used market. So just buy a good one, preferably that has been owned by a mature and caring enthusiast, and obviously have a full pre-purchase inspection carried out. But if it passes those with flying colours, honestly, what a car. But the thing that impresses me most about the i20N is that when you consider what manufacturers have to go through these days in regards to legislation, safety requirements, emissions controls, somehow Hyundai have built this really affordable, practical and easy to live with little 5-door hatchback that is also amazing to drive and it will dominate track days till the cows come home. But then what's most impressive is that Hyundai have basically taken what is metal and plastic electronics and injected all of that with genuine charm and charisma, and they've done it for what, like $35,000? Honestly, that is just amazing. I feel like the i20N is what all of the best hot hatches of the 1980s and 1990s wanted to be when they grew up. Look, a well cared for one of these is an absolutely fantastic car. And if you can afford one and you haven't bought one yet, are you okay? Why? Why haven't you bought one? This thing's awesome. Honestly, why haven't you bought one? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Now inside, what are these wonderful Hyundai? Oh, dude. But on the used market, they kick off from around, because look, they were instrumental in slow down.